The lights on the command bridge of the Earth Coalition vessel Defiant flickered as Commander Susan Miller studied the holographic display of the massive space station ahead. The Galactic Council headquarters loomed against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, its spiral structure unlike anything humans had built. After decades of searching the stars for intelligent life, humanity was about to have its official first meeting with the 17 alien species that governed the galaxy. Nervous? Lieutenant John Davis asked, standing at attention beside her. His hand rested near his sidearm, a habit from his years as a Marine. Wouldn't you be? Susan replied, straightening her uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and she had spent hours making sure every medal and insignia was perfectly placed. First impressions mattered. Humanity's future might depend on what happens in the next few hours. John nodded. The aliens have been watching us for years. They could have contacted us any time. I don't like that they waited until we developed faster-than-light travel. Dr. Olivia Jones joined them at the view screen, her eyes wide with excitement, rather than concern. As Earth's leading expert on possible alien biology, she had been preparing for this moment her entire career. Think about it, she said, her voice quick with enthusiasm. Some of these species have been spacefaring for thousands of years. Imagine what we can learn from them, or what they might want from us, John muttered. Communications Officer Alan Wright interrupted their conversation. Commander, we're receiving docking instructions from the station. Their language matches the signals we intercepted near Alpha Centauri. Susan took a deep breath. Take us in, steady approach. Let's not give them any reason to worry. The Defiant moved slowly toward the designated docking bay, its engines humming quietly. The ship was humanity's newest vessel, built specifically for this mission. While primarily diplomatic, it carried decent defensive capabilities just in case. As they docked, Susan addressed the diplomatic team. Remember your training. Follow alien customs when possible, but maintain Earth Coalition dignity. Our goal is peaceful contact and potential alliance, not submission. The team of 12 humans walked from the Defiant into the alien station. The air smelled different, not unpleasant, but with an unfamiliar sweetness. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard, making each step feel bouncier than normal. They were met by a delegation of 3 aliens. The one in front had blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. It stood on 4 legs with 2 sets of arms folded across its chest. Large eyes with vertical pupils studied the humans with what Susan hoped was curiosity, rather than hostility. Welcome, Earth representatives, the alien said, its words translated through the devices Alan had programmed. I am First Speaker Korev, of the Galactic Council. We have awaited your arrival with great interest. Susan stepped forward and bowed slightly. First Speaker, I am Commander Susan Miller of the Earth Coalition. We come with peaceful intentions and hopes for friendship. The alien made a gesture that might have been a nod. Please follow. The Council awaits. They were led through winding corridors where various alien species moved about their business. Olivia was practically vibrating with excitement, her eyes darting everywhere, trying to catalog every new life form. The council chamber was a vast circular room with 17 raised platforms arranged in a circle. Each platform held representatives from a different species, all watching the humans with expressions impossible to read. Susan and her team were directed to stand in the center. She felt exposed under the gaze of so many alien eyes, but kept her posture straight and confident. First Speaker Korev took his position and addressed the council. Esteemed representatives, today we welcome the delegates from Earth, a planet from the outer rim that has recently achieved faster-than-light travel. The introduction continued with formal statements from various council members. Most seemed neutral or cautiously welcoming. Then a creature with dark red scales and multiple eye stalks rose from its platform. I am Ambassador Zurlak of the Ventari Dominion, it announced, its translator giving its voice a harsh edge, and I must object to these proceedings. The humans have already trespassed in Ventari sacred space near their Alpha Centauri. They sent unmanned probes into areas clearly marked as restricted by council law. Susan frowned. Ambassador, We had no knowledge of any restricted areas. Our probes were scientific in nature with no harmful intent. Ignorance does not excuse trespass, Zerlak snapped. The Ventari Dominion demands reparations and the surrender of all data collected from our sacred space. Before Susan could respond, Alan whispered urgently in her ear. Commander, we never received any warning signals or notices about restricted areas. Our surveys showed no markers or beacons of any kind. Susan addressed the council again. With respect, Ambassador Zerlak, Earth received no notification of restricted areas. We are willing to discuss this matter diplomatically, but we cannot be held responsible for violating rules we were never informed of. Murmurs spread through the council chamber. Several representatives seemed to be conferring with each other. First Speaker Korev raised his four hands for silence. This is a matter that requires investigation, he began. But Zerlak cut him off. The humans lie. They knew of our boundaries. Their ships approached our sacred star deliberately. That's simply not true, Susan insisted, feeling the situation slipping out of control. Zerlak's eye stalks quivered with what she guessed was anger. This council has grown soft. The Ventari Dominion will handle this matter ourselves. With that, the alien pressed something on its platform and vanished in a flash of light. Chaos erupted in the chamber. First Speaker Korev tried to restore order, but was interrupted by an alarm blaring through the station. Commander Miller, Alan said urgently, checking his communication device. The Defiant is reporting 3 Ventari warships have just appeared. Near our position, Susan turned to First Speaker Korev. What is the meaning of this? We came in peace. The alien's skin had paled to a lighter blue. You must return to your ship immediately. The Ventari act without council approval. We cannot stop them once they invoke Dominion rights. What are Dominion rights? John asked, his hand now firmly on his weapon. Each species maintains independent authority over their sacred territories, Korev explained quickly. The Ventari claim you violated theirs, which gives them the right to seek judgment. Susan didn't like the way he said judgment. We need to go. Now. The human delegation rushed back through the station toward their ship. As they ran, Susan contacted the Defiant. Prepare for emergency departure. Shields up, but weapons on standby only. When they reached the Defiant, the situation had worsened. The 3 Ventari ships had positioned themselves to block their exit path. They're hailing us, Alan reported as they reached the bridge. On screen, Susan ordered, taking her command chair. Ambassador Zerlak's face filled the view screen. Commander Miller, you and your crew will surrender yourselves for judgment under Ventari law for the crime of trespassing in sacred space. Susan kept her voice steady. Ambassador, there has been a misunderstanding. We had no knowledge of your sacred space and meant no offense. We request safe passage to return to Earth so this matter can be resolved diplomatically. The time for diplomacy has passed, Zerlak replied. Surrender now or face destruction. Susan looked around at her crew. They had trained for first contact for diplomatic missions, but not for this. Not for immediate threats from technologically superior aliens. We will not surrender, she said firmly. Earth Coalition vessels do not yield to threats. The communication cut off abruptly. They're charging weapons, John reported. Susan's mind raced. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but the Defiant was fast. Evasive maneuvers, full power to shields, plot a course that will take us back to Earth as quickly as possible. The first Ventari shot struck the Defiant before its shields were fully powered. The ship shuddered violently. Sparks flew from a console and a crew member was thrown to the floor. Return fire, defensive pattern only, Susan ordered. Focus on creating an escape route. The Defiant fired its weapons, not aiming to destroy, but to distract. The ship accelerated hard, pushing through the Ventari blockade. Hull breach on deck. 3, someone shouted. Seal it off, Susan commanded. Status report. 12 crew members unaccounted for, John replied grimly. FTL drive damaged but functional. Susan felt a cold rage building inside her, but forced it down. Getting her remaining crew home safely was all that mattered now. Once we clear their weapons range, prepare for FTL jump. she ordered. The Defiant took 2 more hits before breaking free. As soon as they were clear, Susan gave the order. Jump! The stars blurred as the ship leaped into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Ventari ships behind. Susan stared at the damage reports coming in, at the list of crew members who would never return home. Humanity's first official contact with alien. Life had lasted less than 3 hours, and somehow they were already at war. The Defiant limped back to Earth with damaged engines and a wounded crew. As the blue-green planet came into view on the main screen, Susan felt both relief and dread. They were home, but they brought terrible news. 3 days later, Susan stood before the Earth Coalition Council in their underground chamber beneath New Geneva. 50 men and women representing all Earth nations sat in tiered seats, their faces grim as they reviewed the mission recordings. So that's it, Council President Nathan Reed said when the footage ended. Our first official alien contact, and we're already at war. We don't know if it's war yet, Susan replied, though she didn't believe her own words. The Ventari acted without full council approval. The other alien species seemed willing to talk. General Frank Carter, a broad-shouldered man with close-cropped gray hair, leaned forward. Commander Miller, in your opinion, what are the Ventari capabilities compared to ours? Susan took a deep breath. Their technology is more advanced. Their weapons cut through our best shields like they weren't even there, but their tactics were predictable, almost arrogant. Arrogance comes from power, General Carter noted. Did you notice any weaknesses? Susan thought back to the brief battle. They didn't expect us to fight back. When we did, they seemed surprised by our maneuverability. Dr. Olivia Jones stepped forward, her research tablet in hand. The Council has asked me to present my findings on the Ventari and other Council species, she said. With your permission? President Reed nodded. Go ahead, Doctor. Olivia brought up images on the large screen. Based on the biological readings we took during the meeting and from analyzing the Ventari weapon signatures, I've made some interesting discoveries. The screen showed comparison charts between human biology and what they knew of the Ventari. Most Council species, including the Ventari, evolved on worlds with much lower gravity than Earth. Their muscle density is approximately 60% of human standard. They also developed in environments with fewer natural predators and more stable climate conditions. She switched to a new image. In simple terms, we come from what they would consider a death world. Earth's high gravity, diverse predators, extreme weather patterns, and constant warfare shaped humans into something the Council species have never encountered before. The room was silent as the implications sank in. Are you saying we might have physical advantages? President Reed asked. Not just physical, Olivia replied. Psychological, too. Council records that First Speaker Korev shared show most member species developed space travel before they unified their own planets. They've had thousands of years of peace. Humans developed faster-than-light travel less than a decade after our last global conflict. General Carter stood up. I have reports from our intelligence division that might be relevant. He motioned to an aide who distributed data tablets to the Council members. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected multiple Ventari ships entering our solar system. A conservative estimate puts their arrival at Jupiter's orbit in 14 days. Murmurs of alarm spread through the chamber. We need to evacuate the outlying colonies, someone suggested. We need to surrender before they get here, another voice countered. Susan felt anger rising in her chest. No, we will not surrender. All eyes turned to her. The Ventari attacked us without provocation, she continued. They killed 12 of my crew. If we surrender, we're telling the entire galaxy that humans can be bullied and threatened. Is that the legacy we want to leave? General. Carter nodded in agreement. Commander Miller is right. We may be outmatched technologically, but Earth still has teeth. President Reed looked troubled. What do you suggest, General? We fight smart, Carter replied. Dr. Jones's findings give us a starting point. If the aliens evolved in low-gravity environments, they likely built their ships with different structural considerations than we did. He turned to Susan. You said their shields were powerful. What about their physical hulls? Susan recalled. The brief exchange of fire. We never got through their shields to find out. Then that's what we need to discover, Carter said. And I think I know how. The plan came together quickly. While the Ventari had superior energy weapons and shields, humans had been perfecting physical weapons for thousands of years. Within days, Earth's orbital platforms were being retrofitted with mass drivers, essentially giant railguns that could launch tungsten rods at incredible speeds. Mining ships that normally broke up asteroids were converted to weapons platforms, their drilling equipment replaced with launch tubes. Lieutenant John Davis worked alongside engineers, helping adapt marine combat tactics to space warfare. The Ventari will expect us to use energy weapons like theirs, he explained as Susan toured the converted mining ship Rockbreaker. They've evolved beyond physical projectiles, but sometimes the old ways work best. The ship's captain, a weathered woman named Diane Harris, demonstrated the newly installed mass driver. This beauty can launch a 20-kilo tungsten rod at 30 kilometers per second, she said proudly. We've got 200 loaded and ready to go. Susan studied the simple but deadly weapon. Will it penetrate their shields? That's the beauty of it, John replied. According to Dr. Jones's analysis of their shield technology, their energy barriers are calibrated to stop energy weapons. Lasers, plasma, that sort of thing. Physical objects moving below a certain speed pass right through their shields with minimal resistance. And this launches well below that threshold? Susan asked. Exactly, Diane confirmed. But the mass makes up for the relatively slow speed. When 20 kilos of tungsten hits a ship's hull, shields or no shields, something's going to break. As the Ventari fleet approached Jupiter, Earth made final preparations. 300 ships formed a defensive line. Converted miners, retrofitted, transports, and Earth's small fleet of actual warships. They were outnumbered 2-1, but Susan felt a strange confidence as she took command of the defense fleet from the bridge of the repaired Defiant. All ships check in, she ordered, and listened as each captain reported ready for battle. The Ventari have entered visual range, Alan Wright reported from his communications station. They're sending a message. On screen, Susan commanded. Ambassador. Zerlak appeared, looking exactly as arrogant as Susan remembered. Commander Miller, I see you've gathered your primitive vessels in a futile display of resistance. Surrender now, and we will consider allowing your species to live as servants. Under Ventari guidance. Susan met the alien's gaze without flinching. Ambassador Zorlak, I have a message from Earth. We did not seek this conflict, but we will not shy away from it. This is your only warning. Turn your fleet around immediately. Zerlak's eye stalks quivered with what might have been amusement. Or what, human? Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships are technological toys compared to our fleet. Susan smiled coldly. Then I guess you have nothing to worry about. She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Target the lead Ventari ship. All units with mass drivers prepare to fire on my command. The Ventari fleet advanced confidently, their formation tight and precise. They clearly expected an easy victory. They're charging weapons, John reported from his station. Susan nodded. Wait for it. Wait until they're fully committed. She watched as the Ventari ships moved deeper into the kill zone they had established. Now, all ships fire mass drivers. Across the human fleet, launch tubes spat out hundreds of tungsten rods. The simple projectiles crossed space in seconds, invisible except as blips on radar displays. The effect was immediate and devastating. The tungsten rods passed through the Ventari shields as if they weren't there, punching through the alien hulls with catastrophic force. Ships began breaking apart, atmosphere venting into space from multiple breach points. Direct hits reported across the Ventari fleet, John announced, his voice tight with controlled excitement. Their shields had no effect. On the main screen, Susan watched as the neat Ventari formation dissolved into chaos. Several ships were already drifting, completely disabled. Others were frantically trying to adjust their shields. They're attempting to recalibrate their defenses, Olivia reported, monitoring the energy readings. But they can't seem to block both energy and physical attacks simultaneously. All ships fire second salvo, Susan ordered. Target their engines and weapon systems. The second wave of tungsten rods struck with the same devastating effect. More Ventari ships broke apart or lost power. "They're retreating!" Alan called out as the remaining Ventari vessels turned and accelerated away from Earth. A cheer went up across the bridge, but Susan silenced it with a raised hand. "Stay alert. This isn't over." She turned to Alan. "Any transmissions?" He listened to his earpiece, then looked up in surprise. "They're broadcasting on an open frequency. To the entire galaxy, not just to us." "Let's hear it," Susan said. Ambassador Zerlak's voice filled the bridge, no longer arrogant but urgent and alarmed. "Attention all council species. Do not engage the humans. Repeat, do not engage. They use primitive weapons with devastating effect. The Death Worlders are more dangerous than we believed." As the remains of the Ventari fleet fled back toward deep space, Susan knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had won its first interstellar battle, but the war had barely begun, and news of the human victory spread quickly across Earth. Videos of the battle showing human ingenuity defeating alien technology played on screens in every city. People celebrated in the streets, their fear of alien invasion replaced with pride in humanity's resilience. But in the secure meeting room beneath New Geneva, Susan Miller knew better than to celebrate too soon. "The Ventari underestimated us," she told the gathered military leaders. "They won't make that mistake again." General Carter nodded in agreement. "Our intelligence shows increased activity across Ventari space. They're gathering a larger fleet. And they're not coming alone this time." President Reed frowned. "Not alone? Who's joining them?" "The Krell Collective," Alan Wright answered, bringing up images on the main screen. The pictures showed insect-like aliens with 4 arms and compound eyes. They're close allies of the Ventari and control about 20 star systems. Dr. Olivia? Jones stepped forward. "I've been studying the biological data we gathered during the council meeting. The Krell evolved on a world with very thin atmosphere and almost no bacteria or viruses. Their immune systems are practically non-existent compared to ours." Susan considered this information. "How can that help us?" Olivia smiled. "Humans carry thousands of bacterial species that live in and on our bodies harmlessly. To the Krell, even our harmless bacteria could be devastating." "Are you suggesting biological warfare?" President Reed asked, looking uncomfortable. "Not exactly," Olivia replied. "Just passive exposure. The Krell would consider our normal presence as biological contamination. We wouldn't need to develop weapons. We are the weapons." This revelation triggered a new direction in Earth's defense strategy. Instead of focusing solely on physical weapons like the tungsten rods, Earth scientists began developing what they called environmental modifiers, essentially delivery systems for non-harmful human bacteria. Meanwhile, Lieutenant John Davis led a team on a more dangerous mission. The Earth Coalition had decided they needed allies, and John was sent to contact the Araxians, a species mentioned several times in the council records as being resistant to Ventari authority. Susan watched, the small unmarked ship carrying John and his team disappear into the darkness of space. She worried for his safety, but they needed friends in this vast, suddenly hostile galaxy. 2 weeks passed. Earth's colonies on Mars and the Moon fortified their positions. Civilian ships were retrofitted with basic defenses. Everyone worked together, knowing the next attack could come at any time. Then it happened. "Multiple FTL signatures detected near Mars orbit," Alan reported, his voice tense. 30 Ventari ships and at least 40 Krell vessels. Susan took her position on the bridge of the Defiant, which now served as the command ship for Earth's defense fleet. "All ships, battle positions, deploy the environmental packages but hold fire on conventional weapons until my command." The combined Ventari Krell fleet moved with obvious caution, maintaining distance from the human ships. They had learned from their previous defeat. "They're launching smaller vessels," the tactical officer reported. "Hundreds of them, heading toward the Mars colony." Susan frowned. The smaller ships would be harder to hit with mass drivers. "Deploy our own fighters to intercept, and launch the environmental packages now. Across the human fleet, small drones shot toward the alien formation. These carried no explosives or weapons, just canisters of common Earth bacteria, completely harmless to humans but potentially devastating to alien biology. The Ventari are jamming our communications with the Mars colony, Alan reported. Susan gripped the arms of her command chair. Keep trying, and tell our fighters to focus on protecting the civilian areas. The battle above Mars was chaotic and brutal. Human fighters, though outnumbered, fought with remarkable courage. The mass drivers worked again, but the Ventari had adjusted their tactics, keeping their ships in constant motion to avoid the deadly projectiles. However, something unexpected was happening among the Krell ships. Several were drifting out of formation, their movements becoming erratic. The environmental packages are working, Olivia reported, studying the sensor readings. The Krell crews are getting sick. Within hours, the tide began to turn. More Krell. Ships lost power or drifted out of control as their crews succumbed to what humans would consider minor infections. The Ventari, seeing their allies falling without being hit by human weapons, began to retreat. But the victory came at a cost. The Mars colony had suffered heavy damage. Hundreds of colonists were dead, and vital infrastructure was destroyed. As Susan coordinated rescue efforts, she received an urgent message from Alan. Commander, we're picking up a transmission from Lieutenant Davis. He's returning and he's not alone. Susan hurried to the landing bay to meet John's ship. When the airlock opened, John stepped out, looking tired but triumphant. Behind him came 3 aliens unlike any Susan had seen before. They had sleek, almost feline bodies covered in short gold-brown fur. Their eyes were large and amber-colored, set in triangular faces. Each had 6 limbs, 2 legs, 2 arms, and 2 smaller appendages that seemed designed for delicate work. Commander Miller, John said formally, may I present Ambassador Sarek of the Araxian Confederation. The lead alien stepped forward and made a gesture that looked like a bow. Commander, it said through a translation device, your lieutenant has told us much about Earth and its fight against the Ventari. We are impressed. Susan returned the bow. Thank you, Ambassador. We welcome any friends in these difficult times. Ambassador Sarek's amber eyes studied her. The Ventari have dominated council politics for centuries. Many species resent them but fear to act. Your victory has changed perspectives. We don't seek domination, Susan assured him. Just the right to exist peacefully. Peace comes through strength, Sarek replied. The Araxian Confederation has 12 member species across 32 star systems. We offer alliance with Earth. This news transformed Earth's position. With the Araxians' help, humans gained access to advanced alien technology and valuable intelligence about council politics. They learned that several other species were watching Earth's resistance with interest and might be persuaded to support them, or at least remain neutral. But the most important development came from Dr. Olivia Jones's continuing research. After studying samples from the captured Krell ships, she made a shocking discovery. It's not just bacteria, she explained to Susan and the coalition leadership. Human blood contains iron levels that are toxic to half the council species. The very thing that lets us carry oxygen efficiently would poison them, and the radiation levels we tolerate daily would kill most of them within hours. President Reed looked stunned. So we're not just from a death world. We are death, Olivia finished. To them anyway. Our normal biological functions, our environmental tolerances, even our food, it's all potentially lethal to most council species. This information changed everything. Earth now understood why the Ventari had been so quick to attack. It wasn't just about territory or resources. It was fear. Humans represented a biological threat simply by existing. Can we use this knowledge to end the war? Susan asked. If they fear us this much, perhaps we can negotiate from a position of strength. Perhaps, General Carter agreed. But the Ventari pride themselves on their dominance. They won't surrender easily, especially to a species they consider primitive. Just then, Alan burst into the room. Commander, Mr. President, we've just received word. The Ventari and their remaining Krell allies have attacked our lunar colony. They've landed ground forces. Susan stood up immediately. Why would they risk ground combat when they know about our biological advantages? Because they've adapted, John said grimly. Intercepted communications show they're using sealed environment suits. They're trying to neutralize our biological edge. President Reed turned to Susan. Commander Miller, I'm authorizing a full counteroffensive. Take whatever forces you need to defend the lunar colony. Susan nodded, her mind already planning the battle ahead. The Ventari had proven they could adapt to human advantages. Now humanity would need to show just how creative a Deathworld species could be when fighting for survival. As she headed to prepare her troops, Susan reflected on how, quickly, everything had changed. 1 month ago, she had led a diplomatic mission seeking peaceful contact with alien life. Now she was leading humanity in a war across the stars. And despite the terrible cost, she couldn't help feeling a grim pride. The galaxy had declared war on humanity, thinking they were an easy target. Instead, they had awakened Earth's ancient warrior spirit. It was a mistake the Ventari would not live to repeat. The lunar surface glowed with weapons fire as Susan led the human counterattack against the Ventari ground forces. Unlike Earth with its thick atmosphere, the moon offered no protection from space. The battle took place in the vacuum, with both sides wearing environmental suits. They've taken the main dome, John reported, crouching beside Susan behind a ridge of lunar rock. Ahead of them, the large transparent dome that housed the colony's central hub was occupied by Ventari troops. Their red-scaled bodies were visible through their clear helmets as they moved through the human settlement. How many civilians still inside? Susan asked, checking the oxygen level on her suit. About 200, John replied grimly. They're being held in the central plaza. Susan studied the dome through her tactical visor. The Ventari had sealed all airlocks and posted guards at each entrance. Their environmental suits protected them from human bacteria, negating Earth's biological advantage. We need a new approach, she said. Something they won't expect. What the Ventari didn't know was that humans had been preparing for lunar combat since long before aliens appeared. Special lunar marine units trained to fight in low gravity and vacuum conditions. They moved differently than regular troops, using the moon's weak gravity to their advantage. Susan gave the order and 50 lunar marines launched themselves in high, silent arcs over the lunar surface. They soared through the vacuum like deadly birds, covering hundreds of meters in single bounds impossible on Earth. The Ventari, evolving from a low-gravity world themselves, were unprepared for how effectively humans exploited the moon's conditions. Within minutes, the Marines had positioned themselves around the dome. Using specialized cutting tools, they began creating entry points through the dome's outer shell, bypassing the guarded airlocks completely. Dr. Jones? Susan called through her comm. Are you ready with the special package? Olivia's voice came through clearly. Ready, Commander. But remember, this is untested technology. It should disrupt their suit functions without harming the human hostages, but I can't guarantee it. Understood, Susan replied. At this point, we have few options. She gave the signal and Olivia activated the device. A modified EMP generator calibrated to target the specific frequency used by Ventari technology. Inside the dome, the aliens' suit systems flickered and failed. Their protective seals broke, exposing them to trace amounts of human bacteria that floated in the colony's air system. As the Ventari forces stumbled in confusion, the lunar marines breached the dome. The fighting was brief but intense. Unlike the earlier space battle, this was close-quarters combat where human physical advantages became clear. Even in their armored suits, the humans were stronger and faster than the Ventari troops. Within an hour, the colony was secured. The Ventari survivors were taken prisoner, Earth's first alien captives. Susan walked through the reclaimed colony, checking on the freed civilians and assessing the damage. She paused when she saw Dr. Olivia Jones examining one of the disabled. Ventari environmental suits. Found something interesting? Susan asked. Olivia nodded, her expression troubled behind her helmet visor. Their technology is impressive, but that's not what concerns me. She pointed to a small device attached to the suit's chest plate. This is a biosampler. It's been collecting human biological data. Susan frowned. You think they're trying to develop biological weapons against us? It's possible, Olivia admitted. But I'm more worried they're looking for ways to adapt to our biology. If they can develop immunity to our bacterial advantage. The implications were clear. Earth's strongest defense might be temporary, as Susan prepared to return to Earth. With this concerning news, an urgent message came from Ambassador Sarek of the Araxians. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session to discuss what they were now officially calling the human problem. Rather than attend in person, where they might be vulnerable, Earth's leadership decided to send a video message. Susan was chosen to deliver it. Standing before the camera in her formal uniform, Susan addressed the Galactic Council with dignity and restraint. Members of the Council, I speak today not as a warrior but as a representative of Earth. We did not seek this conflict. We came to you in peace and were met with unprovoked aggression. She paused, letting her words sink in. Nevertheless, Earth remains open to diplomatic solutions. We do not wish to continue this war, but make no mistake. We will defend ourselves with all necessary force if attacked again. The message was transmitted to the Council meeting. Hours later, Alan Wright received their response. The Council is divided, he reported to Susan and the Earth Coalition leadership. Several species, including the Nebulon Consortium and the Thalassian Collective, are calling for peace talks. Others, led by the Ventari, want to declare all human-controlled space as quarantined territory. Quarantined? President Reed asked. Like we're a disease? From their perspective, we are, Olivia pointed out. Our biology is fundamentally hostile to many of them. As Earth's leaders debated how to respond to the Council's division, an urgent alert came in. A Krell colony in a nearby star system had suffered a catastrophic reactor failure. Their main power source was experiencing a meltdown that threatened the entire colony of 8 million Krell. The radiation levels are already at levels lethal to Krell biology, Alan reported. Their rescue teams can't even approach the reactor. Susan looked at Olivia. But humans couldn't we? We tolerate radiation much better than they do. Olivia checked the readings. These levels would be dangerous but not immediately fatal to humans in proper protection suits. We could work in those conditions for several hours before reaching harmful exposure limits. President Reed seemed surprised. You're suggesting we help them? They're allied with the Ventari. They attacked us. Yes, Susan said firmly. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. The decision was controversial, but the Earth Coalition ultimately agreed. Within hours, a human engineering team led by Susan was heading to the Krell colony. They brought radiation suits, medical supplies, and Earth's best experts on nuclear containment. When they arrived, the Krell authorities were suspicious, but desperate. Thousands had already died from radiation exposure, and millions more would follow if the reactor wasn't contained. We can handle radiation levels that would kill your people instantly, Susan explained to the Krell leader, a large insectoid alien whose compound eyes studied her with obvious fear. Let us help. The Krell reluctantly agreed. For the next 24 hours, human engineers worked in the heart of the failing reactor, absorbing radiation doses that would have been immediately fatal to the Krell. They managed to stabilize the core and prevent a full meltdown, saving millions of lives. As the human team prepared to leave, exhausted but successful, the Krell leader approached Susan. Its insect-like features were impossible to read, but its posture seemed less hostile than before. Why did you help us? It asked through a translator. We are your enemies. Susan removed her helmet, causing the Krell to step back in alarm at her exposed skin. Because that's what humans do, she replied simply. We fight fiercely when attacked, but we help when we can. Today, you needed help. The Krell was silent for a moment. The Ventari told us humans were dangerous primitives who must be contained for the safety of all. Yet you risked your lives for us. We can be dangerous, Susan acknowledged. Any species fighting for survival is, but danger and evil aren't the same thing. As the human ship departed, news of their action spread quickly across galactic communications. Channels. The story of Deathworlders voluntarily absorbing lethal radiation to save their enemies created confusion throughout Council space. The Nebulon Consortium, a powerful trading alliance, officially called for peace talks. The Thalassian Collective, known for their philosophical approach to governance, questioned the Ventari narrative about human aggression. Even some Krell voices began arguing for a reassessment of their alliance with the Ventari. For the first time since the conflict began, Susan felt genuine hope. Perhaps humanity could find its place in the galaxy not just through strength, but through showing who they truly were. A species forged in hardship, capable of both ferocious defense and unexpected compassion. As her ship approached Earth, Susan received a message from Lieutenant John Davis. The Araxians had new intelligence to share. The Ventari were planning one final massive assault on Earth, a desperate attempt to end the human threat before more council races turned against them. The greatest battle was yet to come, but now humanity wouldn't face it alone. The final battle for Earth began at dawn on a clear morning 3 weeks after the Krell colony rescue. Susan stood on the bridge of the Defiant, now upgraded with technology shared by the Araxians. Around Earth, a fleet of over 500 ships formed a defensive ring, not just human vessels but also ships from the Araxian Confederation and, surprisingly, a small contingent from the Nebulon Consortium. Ventari fleet detected, Alan reported from his station. Over 700 ships. They've brought everything they have. Susan nodded calmly. The odds were still against them, but not as badly as before. And this time, Earth had a plan that went beyond mere survival. All ships, maintain formation, she ordered. Remember your training and trust your allies. Ambassador Sarek stood beside her, his amber eyes focused on the tactical display. The Ventari are desperate, he observed. They know they're losing political support in the Council. This attack is their final attempt to eliminate the human threat before they're ordered to stand down. Then we'll make sure it's their last mistake, Susan replied. The Ventari fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in a massive formation that filled the view screen. At their center was a ship 3 times larger than any they'd brought before, Ambassador Zerlak's flagship. They're broadcasting a message, Alan said. Let's hear it, Susan replied. Ambassador Zerlak appeared on screen, his scale-covered face, rigid with determination. Humans of Earth, this is your final chance to surrender. Your colony is surrounded. Your extinction is certain. Submit now, and some of your species may be permitted to live under Ventari supervision. Susan exchanged glances with Sarek, then faced the screen. Ambassador Zerlak, this is Commander Susan Miller. We have a counter-proposal. She nodded to Alan, who transmitted a pre-prepared message. What is this? Zerlak demanded after viewing the transmission. Terms for your surrender, Susan replied calmly. As you can see, we're not without allies now. The Araxian Confederation stands with us. The Nebulon Consortium has declared neutrality but provided observers. 6 other council races have called for an immediate ceasefire. You think this changes anything? Zerlak's eye stalks quivered with rage. We will still destroy you. The transmission cut off abruptly. Moments later, the Ventari fleet began to advance. They're launching fighters, John reported from Tactical. First wave incoming. Susan took a deep breath. Execute Operation Homeworld. Across Earth's fleet, ships began moving in a complex pattern that looked like retreat but was actually a carefully choreographed maneuver. The Ventari, sensing weakness, pushed forward eagerly, directly into Earth's trap. Hidden behind Earth's moon were 200 more ships that now emerged, catching the Ventari in a pincer movement. At the same time, Earth's new weapons activated. Electromagnetic pulses calibrated precisely to the frequency of Ventari shield technology, developed from the suits captured during the lunar battle. EMP weapons firing, John announced. Across, the Ventari fleet shields flickered and died. Their ships, suddenly vulnerable, faced the combined fire of Earth and Araxian weapons. Mass drivers launched their deadly projectiles, now guided by Araxian targeting systems for even greater accuracy. The Ventari flagship is launching something, Olivia reported, studying her sensor readings. Small objects, thousands of them. Susan felt a chill. Biological weapons? No, Sarek said, his voice grim. Boarding pods. They're going to try to take your ships by force. It was a desperate tactic, but not without logic. The Ventari knew they were vulnerable to human bacteria in an open environment. But in the sealed conditions of a space battle, with everyone in environmental suits, their physical disadvantage was minimized. All ships, prepare for boarders, Susan ordered. Security teams to defensive positions. The first boarding pods struck the Defiant with metallic thuds that resonated through the hull. Security teams rushed to the breach points armed with weapons designed specifically for close-quarters combat in space. Susan turned to Sarek. Take command here. I'm needed below. Despite his protests, Susan grabbed a weapon and headed for the lower decks where the Ventari were breaking through. She would not ask her crew to face dangers she wouldn't face herself. The next hour was chaos. Ventari troops poured into the Defiant and other Earth ships, fighting with desperate ferocity. But they found humans equally determined to defend their home. The corridors of the Defiant became battlegrounds where the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Susan fought alongside her security teams, moving from deck to shore up defenses where needed. Her years of training paid off as she led counterattacks against the Ventari boarders, gradually pushing them back toward their entry points. Throughout the fleet, similar battles raged. Human determination and physical advantages made the difference in the close fighting. Slowly, ship by ship, the boarding parties were repelled. On the Defiance bridge, Sarek coordinated the space battle with Araxian precision. The Ventari fleet, caught in the crossfire and with many ships disabled by the EMP weapons, began to break formation. Their flagship is trying to retreat, Alan reported as Susan returned to the bridge, her uniform torn and bloodied but her eyes clear. Susan studied the tactical display. Ambassador Zerlak's massive ship was turning away from Earth, preparing to jump to faster-than-light speed. Target their engines, she ordered. Don't let them escape. Multiple Earth ships fired on the Ventari flagship, disabling its engines in a series of precision strikes. The massive vessel drifted helplessly as the rest of the Ventari fleet scattered, some escaping into FTL jumps, others surrendering as their situations became hopeless. Within hours, the battle was over. Earth had not just survived, it had won decisively. The Ventari threat was broken. Their fleet destroyed or scattered, their ambassador's flagship captured. Ambassador Zerlak was brought to the Defiant in restraints, his once proud posture now defeated. Susan met him in a special chamber designed to be safe for both species. You should have killed me, Zerlak said bitterly. That's not how we do things, Susan replied. You're going to stand trial before the Galactic Council, not just for your attacks on Earth, but for your treatment of other species. The Araxians have quite a list of grievances against the Ventari Dominion. Zerlak's eye stalks drooped. You don't understand what you've done. Humans are too dangerous to be allowed free in the galaxy. Your biology, your adaptability, your aggression, you will dominate everything. Susan shook her head. You still don't understand us. We don't want to dominate. We want to cooperate, to trade, to learn. Yes, we fight fiercely when threatened, but we saved your Krell allies when they needed help, despite being at war. The alien was silent for a long moment. Then what happens now? Now, Susan said, we make peace. 1 month later, Susan stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, this time in person. Beside her were John Davis, Olivia Jones, and Alan Wright, the same team that had faced the disastrous first contact what felt like a lifetime ago. Representatives from all 17 council species were present, including the Ventari, now led by a new, more moderate ambassador. The Araxians had a place at the table too, restored to full council membership after centuries of marginalization. First Speaker Korev addressed the assembly. Today we welcome humanity as the 18th member species of the Galactic Council. Their unique biology and evolutionary history bring valuable diversity to our organization. Susan stepped forward to sign the treaty that would establish Earth's place in galactic society. As she did, She caught the eye of Ambassador Sarek, who gave her the Araxian equivalent of a smile. It had taken a war for humanity to prove its worth, but peace was their true victory. Earth would share its resilience and adaptability with the galaxy, while learning from the ancient wisdom of species that had traveled the stars for millennia. As Susan completed the signing, applause filled the chamber, not just from the human delegation, but from many of the alien representatives as well. "Welcome to the stars, Commander Miller," First Speaker Korev said. "Or should I say Ambassador Miller?" Susan smiled. Her new role as Earth's ambassador would be challenging, but after everything they'd been through, diplomatic negotiations seemed simple by comparison. "Thank you," she replied. "Earth looks forward to a long and peaceful relationship with all Council species." She didn't add the implicit warning that still hung in the air, understood by everyone present. "Congratulations. You've made peace with the galaxy's most lethal species. And as long as that peace lasted, humanity would be the most formidable ally the Council had ever known."